Look, at least promise me you won't drink. Alcohol always leads to trouble.
So we are in your tap room, which is awesomely located right in front of your fermentation tanks. I love the setup here. So I guess first of all, tell us who you guys are and then how you got started. And Jake, you're looking at me like you have a baited question or something you want to.
Just so excited.
That's constipation.
I love our backdrop here. Go ahead, guys, please. We were trying to find the best place to set up, and we found it. So, anyways,
It is awesome.
Well, welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is our tap room. We have it positioned right in the middle of our brew house, essentially. Obviously, we can't brew or be in production when the tap room is open, so it does cause a little bit of stress there when you want to be open more, but you got to brew more.
Okay,
so
that's interesting.
Yeah, there's a risk factor involved when you're cleaning tanks and stuff like that. So we don't want any visitors to get injured.
Does that lead to more night brewing?
It led to an increase of capacity and an increased brew house size so that we didn't have to go around the clock. We currently run 2 shifts up in the brew house, and then most of our production when it comes to cellar work or packaging, we're running about a 9-hour shift a day. So, but what we've done is we've oversized everything to kind of accommodate all of that. As retail has grown, we never expected that when we built this place. And then you hate to all of a sudden wall off the tap room and we lost that feeling of what this place used to be. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we kind of worked around it. And
So this is open all the time. There's no way to
Nope.
partition off
Nope.
the brewery from the tap room.
yeah, so you come to our tap room, you kind of get the real brewing experience.
Yeah.
So like on Fridays when we're kicking down equipment, it's still pretty damn hot in here.
Yeah, when it's hot outside, it is hot in here.
Yeah. So we're cooling with ambient outside air. So we're typically in the brew house about 10 degrees above ambient. So if it's a 90-degree day, it's 100 up there. So and 100% humidity. So yeah, keeps us all skinny. In
Yeah,
here.
right.
Drink it down, sweat it right
That's
out.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, take us back. How did you guys start home brewing? How did this all start? How did you guys come about
Where did the love come
being
from?
the crazy one starting the brewery?
You want to tell the story? You want me to tell the story?
Is it a bet?
Anello and I met back in college. So first couple of days, freshman year of college.
1994.
Yeah, so he came to UW Stevens Point from growing up in Milwaukee. I came over from Rochester, Minnesota, and we met pretty quickly and pretty quickly started homebrewing, essentially. So realizing that, you can buy the ingredients and,
Yeah.
I'd like to remind you, the young people out there, this was pre-internet.
It was, man. There was no cell phones.
Wait, there was never internet? What are you talking about? It's always been internet. What do you mean?
I was just reading something about how you and I are like the last generation to grow up without internet,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
So you were serious when I showed up and I asked about Wi-Fi and you're like, didn't know what I was talking about.
He's learned since
Yeah,
then,
yeah.
but,
So where were you getting your information then, like pre-internet?
Charlie Papazian.
Yeah, the joy of homebrewing was pretty much the only information that was out there. Pretty
Well,
much.
there was also the Homebrewers Bible.
The
That was a
Homebrewers
little bit
Bible.
later.
We didn't get
Yeah.
that for a couple of years.
Yeah.
You're poor, so
Yeah.
but you got the book off Amazon, right? I'm going to tell you.
delivered within
exactly
2
right.
days. Yeah,
How
yeah.
do you get a book without
Amazon.
Amazon? I don't understand.
Yeah, you actually had to
We
go to a
downloaded it.
store and buy a book. Yeah,
Libraries existed?
Yeah, we heard about those.
yeah. Our first batch of producing alcohol was actually an attempt at a homemade cider, which was essentially picking up a gallon of apple cider and throwing some bread yeast into it. We were in the dorms doing this.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Was this approved? Was this,
Yeah.
or was it done on the downloads? And nobody,
Yeah.
So
So
there was an empty dorm room with Jimmy the lock open on that would keep our bottles that would explode in it. Shit like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so the first batch that we did with this apple cider, a girl on the floor above us said, "Well, if it goes bad and you drink it, it'll make you blind."
Which is funny now, but we believed that shit at the time.
Oh, we were all scared to drink it.
You test it.
And again, no internet. What book do you find that says, "Oh yeah, if you drink this, you'll go blind, or you won't go blind"?
You
know,
find
like
that
where do you
one-
find this
That
information?
one annoying guy on the dorm room floor and say, "Hey, try this for me."
Yeah,
That's different than what I was told would make me go blind when I
Right,
was
there was
growing
something
up.
totally different.
Oh, we had learned long before that. That was not true.
I was going to say he tested that theory several
Yeah,
times,
yeah.
so it's
Harry.
his hands were really hairy, but his vision was great.
I love how this show's gone downhill so fast.
Oh yeah, that didn't take long at all.
That's what happened.
That's the longest we've made it.
I think it's the longest we've made.
New record.
Before we go any further, since we're at a brewery and we're all drinking beer, what are we drinking? Adam, what do you got over there?
Tangerine New England IPA. It's awesome.
Sweet.
Love it.
I'm drinking the Kolsch. Is it
Optimism
Kolsch? Kolsch. Kolsch is one of my favorite styles, so this was an immediate go-to for me.
I'm
What do you
drinking our summer seasonal Crew Drive, which, to my knowledge, is the only brooded Pilsner available on the market. And it's pretty fantastic.
We've all had it. It is a delicious beer.
I haven't
Paul-
seen another. Yeah, I haven't seen another one either. So yeah, you're right.
I didn't say your last name earlier, Paul Graham. So that's the other gentleman we have sitting here. So what are you drinking, Paul?
I'm drinking the Kolsch as well. It's
Nice.
it's a Sunday, a warm day, so it's a fantastic companion to a day like today.
Absolutely. What do you got, Jake?
I'm drinking the Crew Drive. I did not realize that I had this before, but whatever. It's delicious.
It's probably not going to be your only one today. So
Oh, no, it's definitely not. I didn't drive, so.
perfect.
Yeah.
You are driving home.
Here we go.
You can play the game that I play with my wife. The last one to get drunk has to drive.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's pretty fair, I think.
Yeah.
We're driving my daughter's car, so it's whatever.
Actually, no,
happens.
we do not condone that here.
Yeah.
Essentially. It's not a thing that we do.
No.
It just usually means my wife drives when I bring my game up.
All right, so you're brewing in your dorm room, and then you're like, "Wow, this is pretty good," or what?
No, it was awful.
It was all right.
Yeah, well,
horrible,
and we
man.
graduated. You know, we pretty much somebody was brave enough to taste it. They didn't go blind.
Didn't go blind.
A few other people, including us, tried it, and it was awful.
Yeah.
You know, like we can do better than that. You know,
How much
that's
did you
kinda-
make? Like a 5
A
gallon?
gallon.
A gallon?
A gallon. I mean, it was
Yeah.
literally like pop the top off, pour some yeast in, put the top back on.
And we should point out I'm pretty sure it was bread yeast.
yeah, oh yeah, it was
Oh,
bread
wow.
yeast. Yeah,
Because it's not like you could go buy brewer's yeast.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. So, yeah, it was awful. You know, and I think kind of the motto for our life has always been, we can do better. So it's
Did you test it? Did you know what the specific gravity was and what the ABV ended up?
we didn't even know what a hydrometer was.
This is just total experimentation.
Yeah,
Just off the cuff.
I don't even know if it had alcohol in it. It just tasted horrible.
Were you speculating on the ABV? Like, well, this could be a 5, a 2, a
it-
12?
Like a 8.10 for sure.
Sure. Nailed it.
Oh, I mean, we were kids. You gotta
Yeah.
remember
Yeah,
that.
Yeah,
you
we were
know?
18 years old,
This was
you know.
before we had the joy of homebrewing.
Yeah.
Before we had the bike.
Oh, that was
Okay,
before you
okay.
had
It
it.
was-
Okay.
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah, and so I think shortly after that, we had a friend who grew up in Stevens Point and didn't live in the dorms, and he said, "Well, I've brewed before. Let's brew together." So we went over to his place and did a batch over there.
yeah.
It fermented it in a 5-gallon carboy.
Sure.
And didn't bother tasting it before we bottled it. I'm sure by that point it was so contaminated that it didn't matter. But, we had collected Hacker Shore bottles, so all the half-liter bottles. And as we're getting ready to bottle it, our buddy Sean was like, "Well, I think we put a heaping tablespoon of sugar into every bottle." It was like, "Sure." So
Every
Holy
bottle.
shit.
And just not even measuring it, just like
just
dumping it into the bottles.
like
You know?
literally a paper funnel that we rolled
Yeah,
up,
it's
like a
just-
piece of paper, you roll up into a funnel, a tablespoon, heaping
Yeah.
tablespoon into every bottle.
Oh my gosh.
Needless to say, batch number 2 didn't turn out either.
Those things hit the ceiling when they explode.
I was gonna say.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah.
Yeah, there was one party that we were at, and we kind of jokingly left some bottles because they still had the Hacker Shore labels, like around the basement, And as the beer ran out, people would be like, "Oh, there's a Hacker Shore right there," and you'd hear it when it opened. You just boom, and so you turn and watch as the foam just went.
Good times.
Yeah, yeah.
Good times.
So you guys are off to a great start.
Oh yeah. It was a solid start, man. It's exactly
So that immediately turned into we should open a brewery.
Exploding beers. Everybody wants exploding
Is it wrong
beers.
of me to say that's not too far off from where we're at today?
Tablespoon of sugar.
So that's the secret around here.
Oh,
Tablespoon of sugar in every beer.
Well, but by the time we got done with college, though, we had a 4-tier gravity-fed system, 15 gallons. I worked at the parks, had access to welding equipment and a good welder, so we had fabricated some awesome brewing equipment.
In my garage.
In his garage, and we were by the end of college, we were cranking off some great beers, and in quite a large quantity.
Throwing house parties, charging cup fees.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was just our homebrews on tap.
Wow.
Out of a fridge in the basement.
4 tappers on the
$4 to
fridge.
get
Everything
in.
was in corny kegs. It was
Totally illegal.
So,
Totally illegal. Statute of limitations is up on that shit.
yep. Yeah, remember we're talking 20-some years ago. So
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So how did that lead into? Let's do this thing. Start a brewery.
Yeah.
Well,
Was there a period of like you got jobs and you're like, man, we really just need to go back to what we love doing?
not
Not
for me.
really.
Yeah. So Anello and I didn't start the brewery. So
Okay.
I was the first employee. So
Oh, okay.
Yep. So
that's why I read
some,
on there,
some
yeah.
good buddies, Mike and Jerome, had actually started Central Waters in January of 1998. They hired me on in August, so 8 months after startup. Mike was a silent partner. He didn't work there. Jerome was basically doing everything himself. They called me because they had heard I graduated, had heard about our home brewing from a guy who was volunteering with them. Remember Josh?
Yeah.
Yep. Josh had been doing a lot of volunteering with them, and said, this guy just graduated. He's looking for a job, And so they hired me on part-time. I had another full-time job that I was doing, and within 3 months, they told me to quit the other job and come work for a wonderful $6.50 an hour full-time, So Anello started on shortly.
It was
I think
shortly after that. I was in Alaska when all that went down.
Yep.
And I came back. You had bought a house. I needed a place to live, so you rented me a room in your house. And we're like, yeah, I can get you a job at this brewery that started up. That Jerome had started up, and so I went there and started working.
Yeah.
It was the two of us then. And then now Paul has stayed with Central Waters ever since that point, right? I left shortly after that, actually. It wasn't too
Just
long.
couple of months.
Where they're like, we can't afford both of you guys at this whopping hourly rate. But you had to remember, too, this was before 2000 even. Craft beer was just not a thing.
Right.
Wholesalers would not pick up the brand because they didn't believe that craft beer was... the late 90s was like kind of a crash of craft beer because in the mid-90s you had all these brew pubs popping up,
Right.
including one in Stevens Point that's no longer there. I left Central Waters to go work at the brew pub in Stevens Point. And then I worked for Point Brewery and then a brewery up north, and none of them really panned out to what I was looking for. So, this is partly telling some of Paul's story here, but then while I was gone, Paul bought the brewery from Mike and Jerome with another guy that was a friend of ours. I came back, worked a little bit for those guys, kind of went into my career path that I went to college for, which was counseling. And then it came back, for me, I came back in January of 06 and bought out Paul's original business partner, Clint. And so since January of 06, it's just been the two of us.
Nice.
And that was back in Junction City still where we started, not here.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's the abridged
What was it
version.
like,
A
Paul,
lot of
when you-
shit
when you
happened in
bought-
between all
when you
that.
bought in with Clint.
It was, those were some rough years.
Yeah.
We were in a landlocked building, 50 by 50 building, 2,500 square feet. No forklift, no loading dock. You basically you unloaded trucks by hand. So all the raw ingredients coming in, the packaging materials, all unloaded by hand. When I bought the business, we had a one-head filler, so we were filling 22-ounce bottles one at a time. On a good hour, I could fill 7 cases.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
We had a 7-barrel brewery that was literally cobbled together from old dairy tanks. So, it was nothing more than a really large homebrewing system.
Yeah.
You know, you get into the July and August months, you had hard times controlling temperatures and fermentation. You know, it was a rough life without a doubt. You know, and dumping batches that just couldn't pan out because of temperature fluctuations. You know, and consistency problems. You were landlocked, so you couldn't really grow. We had Highway 10
no
literally in
expansion.
front of us. You know, we had the railroad immediately behind us.
By immediately meaning you could touch a train and the building at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not even exaggerating.
Well, you know, the original owners
Wow.
had bought the building for $5,000. I think we sold it for about $3,000. You know, so I mean, Junction City's a dying town, so you know nobody really supported you there. You had to drive 8 miles out of town to buy beer.
Yeah.
This is pre-tap rooms, you know. I mean, like,
Yeah, tap rooms were not. I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
That was not a thing then. Like
Yeah.
beer tourism was not at all a thing. You'd get occasionally people that would come in, maybe fill up a growler, but people weren't looking to go to a brewery and hang out and drink like they are today. It was
Yeah.
not that at all.
yeah. So we didn't have a retail aspect, you know, and so
No.
I mean, it was literally
Retail was Beer Fest. That's where we sold
Beer
retail.
Fest. Yeah. Yeah, that's how we sold T-shirts and merch. It was you'd bring all that gear to Beer Fest, and
Yeah.
that's the only way you got merch out there because people didn't come to breweries.
Yeah.
You know, and
Which is frankly, I think something that gets missed with a lot of the new breweries that have opened up. 90% of them that have opened up is they were never a part of that history. Most of them weren't even old enough to drink when that history was going on. You know what I'm saying? So, how long it's taken for us to turn this industry into what it is today? Man, it was very different back then.
yeah, I think our best year in sales in Junction City was $230,000. So.
Which was a lot.
For
us
back
back
then,
then,
it felt
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
You know, we were probably pulling home $12,000-$13,000 in income. You know, I had years that were $8,000 in income. You know, but you're young and dumb. You know, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
young enough to work 80, 90 hours a week
I was gonna
constantly.
say, how many hours were you working?
Yeah, so I went from $6.50 an hour when I bought the place down to probably $3 an hour because I was
how many
trying to
hours
take
you
the
were-
same income home,
Yeah.
but I'm working twice as many hours.
right,
You know, I mean, those were some struggling years. You know, and banks weren't willing to take risks on you because craft beer is a fad. You know, that's what everybody's
There's
saying.
no investors. There's nobody you could go to and be like, "Yeah, I'll invest in you. Here's some
I mean,
some working cap." Like that wasn't it.
You're a food-related business, you know, which is high risk to begin with,
Right.
you know, especially back then, you know, and you're a brewery, which everybody thinks is a fad.
Right.
You know, here I am, 20-something, ponytail, you know, I got a damn good business plan, but banks won't even read it, you know, so what do? You're just
Because it was
you
a
know?
brewery, they're just like,
Yeah.
no, we're just not gonna.
Yeah.
We're
No,
not
the
lending money.
Was craft even like coined back then? Did you use that terminology at that
no,
time?
it was
We were micro.
microbrewery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah,
was
micro
micro.
was-
Yeah, our
Micro-
very first slogan was "Micro Brew for the Micro Few."
Yeah,
Microbrew,
Oh, yeah.
micro few.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and literally, I mean, it was unload trucks, brew it, bottle it, throw it in the back of your trucks, drive it around, you know, central Wisconsin, and basically peddle your wares. And
yeah. For the first 9 years, we sold our own beer. We didn't have a wholesaler, so we would sell it around Stevens Point, Wausau, and then eventually we ended up going once a week. Every Friday, we'd fill up this from a pickup truck, progress to a broke-down minivan. You know, we would throw a bunch of cases and a bunch of kegs into it and drive down to Madison every Friday and to half a dozen accounts sell beer. And some of the funniest stories still exist from like when Paul was trying to go down there with a pickup truck, and if it was raining or snowing, no delivery because the cardboard would get wet.
Right.
You know, so
can't deliver cases when they're getting wet.
Yeah.
So it was like, all right,
Star
no
Liquor
delivery
has
this
got
week,
funny
guys.
stories about
Oh
that,
yeah,
yeah.
We'll see you next Friday.
we'll see you next Friday. Sorry, it's raining
Mad-
today. We
Madison,
can't deliver.
Yeah, Madison was my run. So I'd
Yeah.
brew and bottle Monday through Thursday, and then Friday was my day out of the brewery, you know, and take off and run down to Madison. And
Smart
you know,
though. Would you capture some young beer drinkers that became fans that have followed you since?
I think the
Did any of that?
biggest thing we did back then is create these relationships with retailers
Okay.
where, you know, like we'd bring beer into those accounts and everybody like, woo, Central Waters, you know, you're just, you know, me being a shy guy would just kind of ignore it and walk through, you know, but you foster these relationships that really, in the long run, help build the brand.
It
you
still
know?
exists today.
Yeah, absolutely, you know. And it's that personable relationship of somebody seeing your struggles and enjoying the product at the same time, that they get behind you and they start becoming your salesman.
Yeah.
You know, so Star Liquor, Riley's Wines of the World, Star Liquor. I mean, those were the first 2 accounts in Madison, and those guys pushed product like no tomorrow. I mean, they really helped elevate us. I mean, Stevens Point, you know, Central Wisconsin was great, but it's a limited market just
Right.
based on population.
Right.
You know, when you're talking about, you know, university centric, a little more progressive area in Madison,
Sure.
you know, where craft beer was starting to take off long before it did in Central Wisconsin. These relationships were completely invaluable, you know, and it put us where we are because of that, you know. So, yeah,
Yeah, we didn't start selling out of Central Wisconsin and Madison until 2008. Was the first year we started going to like Milwaukee and Appleton and places like that. So, yeah, and that was after we moved here.
Yep.
When we were in Junction, we did the once a week down to Madison and Central Wisconsin and Wausau. That was it.
So how much were you brewing back then? What
What's our biggest
barrels?
year? 750.
I think the last year we were in Junction, we cranked off about 750 barrels.
Yeah.
And then just for comparison, what are you doing today?
We're right around that 15,000 barrel mark.
Damn.
Yeah.
And how many employees did you
Yeah, how many more
have
people
near
you
the
have
end of
now?
the junction compared to now?
We had one more.
Just
So it was the 2 of us and one more.
so there's 3 that put out 750.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
What do you have?
Plus delivered it.
Plus delivery.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, you're
When
talking.
did you guys
every-
sleep?
So there wasn't a lot of that. After disc golfing, usually.
Yeah, a little
Depending on how nice. See, but those were the good days because depending on how nice the weather was outside. There were days back then where it's like, damn, it's really nice out. Let's go golfing today. Yeah, okay, let's go golfing today. You know?
You know, or something would go wrong. There's no hardware store in town, so if something broke, you'd be like, fuck it, let's go golfing. Yeah. We'll go grab the part.
Closing up early.
I love it.
So how many employees today?
Right now, we have 29 on payroll. So it's we got a
Quite a difference.
Yeah,
yeah,
much larger operation
yeah.
now.
But we have an
Yeah,
incredible
but
crew.
We do. We have